cyber plan, what we want to talk about is not just, the idea is for your business, what kind of cybersecurity plan or program can you put in place? And cybersecurity is such that I was thinking about the keynote from yesterday about where he said perfectionists tend to not start if they know that they can't get 100%. And when I was younger, I was more of a perfectionist. Now I have to deal with him, so it doesn't matter. But no, but so I'm getting a little lax and all that with that. But with cybersecurity, there is no end. There is no completeness. In Greek, the word for complete and perfection is the same word. So it's when you're perfect, that means you've completed it, right? But you never complete cybersecurity, but you still gotta start. So, so we'll talk about awareness again. Why are we doing this? Learning, what you need to learn, or how to help you learn, encourage you to learn, keep on learning. Personnel training, so we'll talk a bit about not just general, what we called yesterday, what we called general hygiene or general security for everybody in your organization, but also how do you deep dive key people to help you really do the cybersecurity plan and that. And the plan basically is what we'll talk about that in terms of a framework and that. So in other words, the things that you should do. And one of the questions, I forget if it was from you or not, with who is really liable for things. And when there's lawyers, the answer is everybody, is whoever they can get to, right? But the best defense against the lawyers is to, I think, do what you can with the best practices and so forth, and at least they, it's harder for them to go after you per se if you do have a plan and so forth. So that's what this is about. Okay, so awareness is a little bit different from the awareness from yesterday. Although I did talk about this, so this statistic, the first one keeps increasing. About 3 years ago, it was just like about 80% of all successful breaches was some sort of social engineering method of getting to you. Now it's about 98%. I forget where I read that from, and that's more recent, so that percentage keeps going up. Social engineering is how people trick you into giving them information in order to get into your system or just, get your credentials or get the data that they want. That's social engineering. There's all sorts of tricks. Cybercrime has risen 600% during the pandemic, which is just crazy. Yeah. Number 3 is not so, that figure kind of changes. The average breach apparently was about $7 million, but in order to repair it and actually to also prevent it or prevent that particular kind of breach, is if you did the cybersecurity programs and tools and implemented it, it only would have cost about $100,000. So those numbers, the specific numbers are not important, it's just the ratio, really. If you get breached in that, it's going to cost you more than if you did the plan and so forth. And you just never know, A lot of people think that what is it that we have that somebody else wants? And like we mentioned yesterday, it's not necessarily what you have. You might be a conduit to something else that they want, right? As part of the supply chain. So it's important to try to help make sure that we do our side of the supply chain. 48 states now require some sort of report for breaching. So legally, you're bound to report a breach. You might not know about it for months and months and months, but once you find out, and it depends what state you're in, one of the links, or a couple of the links in here will show you how you can find out what your state requirements are. So the United States is a hodgepodge. It's not like Europe, it's all one kind of set of rules, sort of. Each state's different, so you have to mind that. Number 5, dynamic denial of service servers and malware, ransomware, software, and all that. It's very, you can go out there to the black hats or just, the black market and just buy it. Like I mentioned, with a Target exploit from 2013, that software was a teenager, Ukrainian teenager, and he sold it for $2,200, and that's all it took. And that's expensive compared to today's price. Now you can actually go, they have cloud services for hackers where you can create denial of service machines and all that and just go for it. So it's crazy. One thing too, I don't mention it here, but you can tell how they're sort of winning in a way because 6 years ago, 5 years ago, for me to buy your social security number and your private data so I can hack into you and all that used to cost about $3. That was about 5 years ago. Now it's about 50 cents. That's because there's so much of it out there now. Your social security number, it's not secure anymore, really. So it's just a matter of, you got to be diligent personally too, keep changing your passwords. And somebody was telling me, they turned off all their password stuff since they're here just to see what would happen. And no, you just got to keep being vigilant. Ooh, that's a new word. Vigilant. Okay. Privacy laws is one thing too that as businesses we need to keep tabs of. A lot of people now with their websites, they'll have a pop-up that says, we collect this data and so forth. And there are actually laws in various states where you have to do something like that. So with California, California especially, they have a thing called CCPA, California Consumer Protection Act. They've got a new one now that's not a regeneration. It's kind of like CCPA 2.0. It's a different name, so that's coming on board. So the number 7's, to me, I'm guilty of that too. 95% of your employees are going to figure out ways of bypassing your security policies, even after you go through all the work of making them, right? Because they think it takes too much time and that, or it's just too much of an interruption or whatever. But if you get breached, it's going to be a lot worse, right? So, okay. A lot of these are social engineering, not all of them, with just different ways that the bad guys can get to you. The passwords, of course, a lot of people still use easy to use passwords. Remember back when Obama was president, I think it was, and Hawaii had this anti-missile practice, and then so where they had the missile alert, the statewide missile alert, and everybody thought it was real, so they were all freaking out, but it wasn't. It was a practice, and then the news took a picture of the guy talking about it. They had his monitor there, and they had a sticky note, and the sticky note had for everybody to see in the entire world his password to get into the system. Yeah. So that's one problem with passwords is, for years and years we've been trying to make complex passwords and that, and the guy, I forget the name of the guy that pushed for that 30 years ago, he said, don't do that anymore. You just need longer passwords. You make it complex, you're not going to remember it. You're going to write it down for everybody to see, right? So, but anyway, easy passwords, there's tools out there, easy to get, they're free to be able to crack passwords and that. Malware, that's still people click on something in an email that they shouldn't download, some sort of malware, so you want to keep your tools up to date. Eavesdropping and sniffing, there's ways, especially if you're someplace, maybe not at work, but you're in a coffee shop or an airport or here at a conference and that, of course, people can sniff the network and see what you're doing and that, or they even have, you can get sniffers for Wi-Fi too. Usually the Wi-Fi, when you try to sniff that network, it's not promiscuous if you have your own laptop. Meaning you can't see everybody else's Wi-Fi, but you can buy a little dongle about like that. And now it is promiscuous and Now you can read everybody's Wi-Fi too. So, and that's real cheap. Phishing, pardon?
$19.
Yeah, $19. Yep. Phishing and spear phishing, of course, that's somebody sending you email spams. That's how the bad guys got into Target, was from a phishing expedition. Spear phishing is where they go after certain people, right? Cross-site scripting, that's more one of the ways is you go to a website, you think it's a legitimate website, and it really isn't in that. Man in the middle, you don't hear too much about that. Man in the middle, somehow they're able to kind of intercept your traffic to a website, to a server, and then they've got the tools where they can pretend to be you, and now they capture your credentials going to some server, and now they have your credentials, and then they behave like you, talking to the server. Meanwhile, you don't realize it because they're pretending to be the server from your other end, and you don't necessarily know that you've been hacked in that way.
Starbucks Wi-Fi access points is
Yeah.
a great man in the middle example.
Yeah. That's why I don't go to Starbucks now. And then denial of service, that's basically where you're not trying to get data, you're just trying to stop other people from using your services per se. So you can, the big one was when about 4 years ago, I think it was, where they found all these web cameras. Then they put a little hack on the web cameras to be their own little denial of service machine. And so then they went after the DNS servers, the domain name servers in the United States, and it brought down a good chunk of the internet. And all it was all these tens of thousands of web cameras that you can buy, right? And they blasted with service requests from the DNS servers. And they all coordinated so that it would all happen at the same time and overloaded the DNS, which brought down the internet, because every time you type in a URL, it has to go to a DNS server, unless it's cached. But, and that's just disrupting business, but it did it big time, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things, people don't realize and stuff when they start asking, putting those quizzes on Facebook.
Yeah.
People start answering questions, about where they were born and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
People do it all the time, you filled out all the information that somebody needs to know to
Yep.
and hack you, because,
Yeah.
what's your password, so get your child for a friend, all that kind of stuff. And people just anonymously post, and once people start answering the stuff on Facebook,
Yep.
and putting all this stuff up there, it's like, yeah, okay, I can look at that and say, yeah, I bet you I can hack your account now.
Yeah.
My favorite color is blue. My mom's maiden name is Johnson. I was born in, Timbuktu, France. All those questions that are your security questions.
Innocent enough that,
Yep.
it's something just, having some fun. And yep.
Yeah, it's one of those games. I mean, I like playing those games, and that's a lot of what's happening. I don't have. Maybe I can make a short story out of this. My Facebook identity is not my real name, and it's never has been, never will be. But so I was helping this one author. He's writing the history of his father, who was an Apollo astronaut, and I helped him a little bit. And so in the acknowledgments, he's got my Facebook name, because everybody knows me by that name rather than my real name. It was kind of fun because in the acknowledgments, my name comes right after 4 other astronaut names, because he put it alphabetically, and I thought, you got to keep it that way. Anyway, but yeah, I don't use my real name on Facebook ever. But anyway, okay. Yeah, Facebook's your friend, right? Okay. Also, be aware of the environment, of course. If you're remote, use your VPNs. Pretty much nowadays, I think everybody does that. Got to be aware of coffee shops, airports, telephone. It's not just computers that people try to get information. Of course, it's the telephone. We get calls from the sheriff. I'm about ready to arrest you for this or that, and it's like, no, I don't. Or the IRS and that. Cell phones. Do you all have anti-malware stuff on your cell phone? Right? because it's a newer, kind of relatively newer attack surface for the bad guys. USBs, again, you don't want to plug in a strange USB you picked up from the parking lot. People who smoke, we talked about that yesterday too. If you go, now you can trust cigar smokers, right? But cigarettes, right. But cigarette smokers, your employees that go outside to smoke, well, if they do that a certain time of day, kind of consistently, the bad guys can figure that out. They'll go out there, they'll go smoke with them, and they're buddy, and then it's very atypical for an employee to challenge them, a stranger, when they try to get back into the building. So that's just another part of one way of social engineering. Windows, which is not the Bill Gates kind, but like at our place, everything, we only have one floor, except for one little part of the plant. It's like 2 floors. And there's a lot of windows around the outside. Well, if you have, like my office has a window there, and if you got your screen facing the window, people can drive by and actually look up stuff too. So you got to make sure, that you keep the screensaver turned on or things like that. Even something silly like that, it's another way of people can drive by and just find out information from you. So anyway, so those are just examples. The idea is to try to get people to think that, the quote unquote, the attack surface is so broad, and you need to be trained and need to learn and need to be vigilant about doing that. So not only personally, but then also as a company as well. So, okay. So one thing, learning is there's an I in security. It's not just IT, meaning security is not just IT's responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. So part of the learning is learning about general hygiene, which we'll get into in a little bit, and then specifics about OT, and then just keep on learning. I don't remember why I got the suit and the beer. Oh, yes. In order to learn well, you got to have a beer, so that's why it's there. Okay. So again, reiterate, 98% of your breaches that are successful come from social engineering. Since one of your employees just happens to goof. They didn't have their beer or their Wheaties for the day, right? So every employee needs to learn the risks, because the risk to your company is, the weakest link or the weakest chain. Some employees will need extra training, and that doesn't mean that that doesn't sound right, does it? No. Yeah, some employees, yeah. But some will need, different departments they'll all have different needs, different attack vectors and different risks and all that. So some of them will need a different kind of a training. For instance, people in finances that handle credit cards, they'll need PCI training in that. The IT guys will need extra training too, for the controls and that. So several companies have training. You can just Google and find all sorts of training for general hygiene and that, different prices and all that. So what we've made available, have you heard this yet? Has John done his LMS thing? Is that later today? Okay. So John Slack, our training guy, he's on our cybersecurity team. And so we've got a cyber hygiene training course that's free to you all. And I'll show you how to get into that here in a second. So that's something John had put together. It's really cool. All right. So specifically to OT then, and you have to understand how cyber attacks can attack OT, because we are a little different than IT and that. So, but one of the things that we have to kind of get on the ball is learn more about IT to begin with, because they have the tools, but sometimes their tools get in the way of OT, like especially, somebody did that just the other day to us. They updated some operating system on something, and it wasn't, I forget what it was. It was some older system. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't us, it was one of our customers. Somebody had updated an operating system on something, and then the whole front end just dies, right? But IT was following their normal rule of keeping everything up to date, but the OT software didn't like that. That's getting better and better, but the big thing too with IT, and that's what I was going to ask yesterday in the panel, is if you all have heard much about cybersecurity, are you being asked by your customers about it much? Or is it in the contract? Is there a section in the contracts and all that about cybersecurity? And if not, maybe this is an opportunity for us, to be proactive and say, yeah, we know about this stuff, and we're working it. So, but there is, like I said, there is a difference between IT and OT. The IT guys need to learn some, and we need to learn, and we need to really work together. So you got to be able to, again, speak their language. Doesn't have to be everybody. And like I was saying yesterday too, you don't have to be an expert in IT to speak their language. They just have to just, I think, get the sense and the feel that you are really trying to work with them in that. And we've been finding more and more that IT wants to have the OT network in the IT. That way they can help apply their controls and their rules and all that. It used to be they wanted nothing at all to do with our networks, right? But that's changing, I think. Okay, and the other side of, again, having a corporate cybersecurity plan, and that is we are part of a supply chain. In a way, we're providing a service to an end customer and so forth. And again, with a targets breach, the big one from 2013, it came from, the first step came by being able to go into, it just happened to be an HVAC company, a local HVAC company, that a small one, and somebody pushed the wrong email down attachment. And then they had a virus, and then all of a sudden the bad guys were able to get into the vendor portal and so forth, and everything fell apart. And so just an HVAC company that was servicing, a particular store, Target store, they were part of that supply chain, and now they were responsible for partially responsible for that. So no one knows everything, which I like being able to talk, together with all you all, and have people like EJ and Andy and Lewis come too, because they know stuff that I don't know, and hopefully maybe a little bit vice versa, right? But it's just so big, and we really need to work together on that. One of the things we've been talking about, or I've talked about, is having some sort of forum or something at KMC that you all can go to and talk to each other and hear, here's a good training material, or here's a good kind of tool, or all that. Just besides the, we used to have a forum for just our product lines and that didn't kind of work so well for one reason or another, but we can revamp that. But I'd also like to get one for just on the subject of cybersecurity too. So, okay. I put this circle here. When you start into cybersecurity, they talk about CIA, which is, here's the goal of security, is you have data, you have information, and the important things about the information, or what you're trying to protect, is its confidentiality, which is the C, meaning only certain people can see the right data. The I is integrity, to make sure that the data really is the right data, that no one's gone in there and munged it and changed it, right? That's the I part. And then the availability part, that's the A. That means it's there when the people who need it, it's there. I said that backwards, didn't I? But so that's called CIA. That's the way IT thinks about things, in a way. For OT, the priority is a little different. Instead of CIA, it's more AIC, meaning a lot of times the availability has higher priority than the other two. I think of our one of our customers, they do oil wells out there in the Gulf and that, and they don't care so much about integrity and confidentiality. Whenever they need to get the data, they got to have the data, and the availability is the big thing. So they have no passwords in their system. Once you get out to the oil well, there's no passwords. And the reason is if the well's on fire, you're not going to remember your password, right? But you've got to see the data. It's got to be available. So anyway, so that's one of the things. I forget if it's, I have a link later on there. I think it's Homeland Security has a really cool free course about IT versus OT, and it's at the very kind of the top level in that, but it really goes into this in good detail. So, and I think it's like a four hour kind of thing, but it's in here too. So, and it's important to know, again, the differences between OT and IT. That way you can help educate the IT guys, because they want to keep, your networks secure, which is why they want your networks to be part of them now. But they have to learn some things about what's important to us too, so. Okay. This is a map of the internet in 1973. Every single computer on the internet's right there. And that's to illustrate the last point. In your corporation and on your laptops and all that, you want to keep scanning for stuff, rogue devices and this and that and so forth. That's one of the things that Epiphany does, is they can, find out, oh, there's this device that wasn't, there before. Why is he there? And so forth. Anyway, so the learning process for everybody and the corporation as well, you want to keep, I call it rejuvenating periodically for the college I teach at. Every semester we go through the cybersecurity training, and it's the same training over and over, social engineering and that. And it's every 6 months, but it keeps it to the fore, and it's just kind of like flying. You don't, if you stop flying for a little while, if you're a pilot and you stop flying for a little while, you get kind of rusty and you bounce when you land rather than a nice smooth landing and that. You just got to keep practicing in that. So that's part of the ongoing learning part. And that's another reason why I say with cybersecurity, it just never ends. It's just always going. There's always something new in that. Another part is to you want to keep up with the threats, if that's possible in a way. There's different kinds of attacks that get done. Ransomware is a big one nowadays, right? That's still, and that's relatively recent or new. It's grown, I think it was 12,000% in the last 3 years, something like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But the way you kind of protect against that is a little different than other ways. I mean, you still want to protect your networks and all that. But again, if they get in by social engineering and then they do their thing, what are you going to do about it? And I think one of the things that came out of ransomware is to back up your data more often than that. Somebody had said the first cyber death in history happened with ransomware because they had, I forget which hospital it was, or they said, oh, you can't get to it. All your data you can't get to, you can't run your OR and all that stuff, and somebody needed some sort of procedure, and they couldn't do it because it was shut down by the ransomware, and so that person died. But so it's getting more and more serious.
Dave, was that the article in the Wall Street Journal?
No, but they might have talked about it. I haven't read that one yet, but there was another one. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Mm-mm.
They use the thermometer in the fish tank to get through to the data center at the casino.
Oh, yeah, oh, I heard about that, but yeah, it's.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
but they were so brilliant
Yeah.
that they didn't transfer the data out in a normal way. They made it look like video feeds. So
Oh.
the detection software on the cyber side didn't pick it up.
Yeah.
Because they actually transferred video feeds out for longer term storage. So the bad guys literally encapsulated 30 million records in something that looked like a video feed. So the defensive
Wow.
tools in place did not see,
Wow.
see this erratic behavior.
Yeah, that's. I mean, so that's another aspect. That steganography, where they embed data inside pictures and all that. That's been around for a long time, but I haven't heard about they're doing that with the video going out, and that's one way of exfiltrating. That's just crazy. No, I heard about the fish tank and all that. That's the other thing with, we have not only OT but IoT, right? So those web cameras that got used 4 years ago, that's an IoT device, really, and a lot of them, they're little companies. They're literally slapping things together in some ways. And so they're buying old software. They're just finding old stuff off the web and using that for their software. And a lot of it's really old and not very secure as far as how it's written, and very easily exploitable. And when people buy their IoT devices, they don't change the default password. So you can go to showdan.io and say web cameras, and it'll tell you every single web camera out there in the world. And you can just make up your list and find out which ones you use the default passwords, and away you go. You're in. Well, I used to do that with one of our competitors. I don't think I'll embarrass them, but I would put in their name. Thousands of their devices were out there in the wild, publicly available default passwords. And I mean, like I said, thousands of them. You can tell by the name. Some of them were pretty critical, right? So make sure you change your default passwords. So, okay. Let's see. So personnel training. One thing is, again, corporate-wide for all your employees, they need to be aware at least of the social engineering part. And like I said, we have a good course where you can. It's just online stuff. There's like 8. Well, I'll get into that. I do have slides on that, but it's easy for people to follow. There are some kinds of certifications that will help. And again, those are kind of targeted for certain people and what they might do or what they're doing for the company. Another thing with certs is it's one way of illustrating to your customer that you're serious about this stuff. So if you have somebody that's certified in this or certified in that, that tends to help. But also, they do learn things as well. And it's not just simply cybersecurity certs. It might be like an IT kind of cert in that. You might have an IT person. I find that once in a while that I'll go out to a job site and they've hired an IT company to do their IT, and they don't know that much, and I know more. Anyway, but so even IT kinds of certs too will help. And then there's, different kinds, IT and OT, cybersecurity, and then software. There are some of our customers that actually make their own software too. And if you're one of them, there's things that you can help your people that are developing software. Like if you want to talk to the Commander Cloud through the API, some people do that. And then, but you want to be careful with that. And there are some courses to help them be more aware of cybersecurity issues, and writing better secure software. Okay. Part of the training for culture, you got to keep harping on the general training for everybody again, because that's where most of the attacks successfully come from, and mainly social engineering. And then what I call regulatory training, there are some, maybe not necessarily regulatory in a legal sense, but like PCI, and where that's not a, it's not a law kind of thing, but it's an industry standard, I think, right? But again, some of those things will be only pertinent to some of your employees. Okay, so this is the KMC ad. So we got free courses for, bless you, for the general, what I call general hygiene training. And there's 9 courses altogether. I think none of them are more than 10 minutes. They're all online. And it's to just kind of get at it. And so it's available for you all for free. And here's the 9 different courses. And it's really, a lot of it, well, some of it is part of the social engineering, some of the details of social engineering. But so these are the 9 courses right now. I don't know if John's got plans on adding any more yet or not.
I know he's got a whole bunch.
Yeah, we've got it, yeah. So we have, we bought some training material for our engineers as well. So they're doing their own set, but we brought it into our own LMS. But this is more for general awareness.
One of the ways we started creation with our guys is to tell them to look at the return address.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They look like they came from HR. Okay, what's the return address? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an HR. Yeah, all sorts of stuff out there.
Yeah, and you got to watch too. I mean, they'll just be a little.
From a contracting business, I mean, here's an addendum to this RFP answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You run along in your daily, I better look at this.
Yep.
Like, yeah, a lot of.
I mean, somebody was telling me yesterday, somebody had made a fake website, and all they did, they added 1 letter to their URL. So if without paying attention, you think you're actually going there. And they had a phishing campaign where they would send emails saying, you owe us this amount of money, or you haven't paid your bill, or something like that. And they wound up getting about $250,000 from people, not realizing, it's all fake, They're getting more and more sophisticated, and they're hiding better and better. So I think the statistic, I was reading the latest statistic is on average, you don't know that you've been breached until about 150 days after the fact, right? And by then, who knows what all they've gotten. So, but if you want to get into our training material for, again, cyber hygiene, here's the path that you go to. You use your partner portal, and then you can just sign up, and away you go. Join the learning path. Yep. Okay, and you can, that's for all your employees. Whoever has a partner portal login, they have access to this. So, okay. Now it's, a lot. It used to be, a lot of our system integrators and that, they didn't have hardly anybody, or they might have had one person that did IT, depending upon the, how big they were in that. So I'd recommend that you get somebody that be able to speak the language of IT, right? There's one way. I like the CompTIA stuff because it's a pretty easy cert to get, and you learn quite a bit in that, so you can get that, and it's usually not expensive. And I think it's like $200 to take the test, and It might be a little bit more than that or roughly that to get a training and all that, but I think it's well worth it to get somebody that knows IT and at least at the beginning, right? Be able to talk the language again. I always like the Udemy Coursera stuff where you can find out more information. They're pretty inexpensive online. They teach you anything about, you pick a topic almost, and they're on there. Anybody use Udemy or Coursera? Yep. So it's udemy.com and coursera.com. I think I spelled that one right. And usually it's like if you wanted to learn, I don't know, you pick a topic and you pay $10, $20. And it's a smorgasbord of different instructors. Instructors make their own material and then they put it up there on the server. And so you want to go through and look at the reviews and see which instructors have a better reviews than that, and you can pick that and $20. And now you've got it's a regular, like I did early Python years ago on that, and it was 30 hours of Python. Good Python training cost me $10. So it's kind of hard to beat. But they do have it started out with, the reason why I mentioned it, they started out a lot of it as IT work because their IT just keeps changing and adding and all that. Some people are adding to that. Some people, I think, I don't know, it's up to you all. When I first started at KMC, there was a push to get everybody in tech support to be CCNA certified. And it's like, you don't need to do that. CCNA is Cisco, Certified Cisco Network Administrator, which means you can go into and all the ins and outs of Cisco routers and all that, which is fine if that's what you have or if that's what your job site has. But, and no IT person, even though you might be CCNA certified, they're not going to let you touch them, right? Because you're not them. You're not part of them. So that's going a little overboard. You can do same thing with, different kind of Google certs and Microsoft certs and other certs. Depends on what you're wanting to do for your business. That's one thing. But to try to be more cyber secure, it's not really that necessary. So, or at least to be more knowledgeable in IT for what we need to do. Okay. For OT training, there are some certs out there for OT, and it's really geared for the end customer rather than for the installers and that. And I've got some lists at the end of where you can get that training or those certificates. But it might be interesting for some of you if you look at that, depending upon who your end customers are, right? They might like have somebody that's at least got that kind of training, and it's geared for cybersecurity. There's a few others. I don't think I put in the one you mentioned. The one that EJ mentioned yesterday, I got towards the end here. These are other organizations that will, just among all sorts of them, that will, you can get some sort of, maybe not a certificate, but you can get training and get knowledge from them. So I do not mention ISA 62443 in here because it's more, our part is more of a vendor manufacturer kind of thing. But one thing too, though, the organizations keep expanding some too, so there'll be more that come up that's more geared for installers and service providers too. So, okay. Cybersecurity and software. Oh, okay. So if you really want to have somebody, get a cybersecurity kind of certificate or training and all that, here are some ideas. These are pretty well known. The SANS one too. That's the one with on the OT side, as far as the end customer goes and that. So these right here are more for the cybersecurity. These are different kinds of things for software. But again, that's really pertinent only if you have somebody writing software and you want to, maybe the person that's doing your own web page, right? If you have your own web service and that, or web server, website, and somebody at one of your employees is building it and that. What else? This is the ISC Square. They've been around for a while. This cert here, that's the one I have. They call it the 10-mile wide and 1-inch deep search, or a cert, meaning it's everything that pertains to security gets in there, and then you go down only so far in each one of the domains, although some of the domains you go further down. It's not just IT, it's like physical security and things like that too. But they've got maybe 150,000 people in it right now, and they did have an annual thing and all that. So they're really, once you get into it, once you get any one of their certs, then all their material is free. And there's a lot of material on keep on getting trained and learned in that. They're a CCSP, that's more for a cloud service. So if you have a cloud service, how do you certify it for and protect it for cybersecurity? The CEH, that's Certified Ethical Hacker. So, that's what we and as soon as you open up Wireshark and run it, you're hopefully an ethical hacker. You're a hacker, but so long as you're doing it well, then you're hopefully ethical, right? Then ICS, they're more into industrial controls too, but a lot of that pertains to what we're doing too. So, all right. Any questions so far? No? Yeah. Yeah, me and ethics. Yeah. Okay. So what I mean by corporate cert, those so far are more for individual people, right? And this gets into certifications that you can have for a corporation. One of the things we did, and I'd like to hear from the rest of you and from EJ too, if it's what we've tried to do is gone down the NIST, what's called the NIST cybersecurity framework path, which is like he said, it's a big catalog of all sorts of things you need to do. So we're trying to kind of divide and conquer. And one of the things that we keep getting asked about is, are we SOC or SOC 2 compliant, which is a CPA kind of thing. In which always, at first we were scratching our heads, why are people asking us if we are certified by the CPA organization in the United States and all that to have secure networks? And one of the only thing I can think of is that's about one of the only certs out there that people kind of know about, I guess. So what we've done is we're going for our SOC 2 compliancy, just to get everybody to quit asking, do you have it, and all that, of course. But there are some, businesses out there that'll help you. They help you organize. A lot of the stuff is writing down procedures and what controls are you using, like writing down how do you define who has access to what data, and how do you define how you get rid of the data, and how do you define how you're protecting it, and all those procedures and policies. So one of the companies there that we bought their service, they just have templates for all those things. You still have to do the work to fill it in that's appropriate for your business and that. But that sure saves a lot of time, but it still takes time. So you gotta, and that's one of the takeaways from this. This is gonna take time and it doesn't stop. So you just gotta not be like me and try to be a perfectionist and then just not really get going. You got to get going. Going on. The one thing I liked about repeat on SOC stuff is since we bought the training package from Vanta, there's another one called Tugboat Logic. I think they're both pretty good, and they're in my list. They're not cheap per se. I mean, it's I forget 20,000 or so. but you get the whole package and all the templates and that, and they work with you to try to get your cert done as soon as you can, in a way, most effectively and all. But there's so much with all these different kinds of frameworks and certifications and all that. There's a lot of overlap, right? So maybe, I don't know, 80 to 90% of what's for a SOC 2 you got to do for NIST, or you got to do for this, or maybe for GDPR or whatever. So there's a lot of overlap, and so we thought it'd be better if we took off a smaller chunk, per se, compared to the whole NIST catalog. Chew off a smaller chunk with SOC, since there's good programs out there that help you get it done. And now you've got your framework in your head as to what you got to do to finish out for maybe some of the other things too. So that's that kind of segues into a framework. A framework is, well, just a framework of how you're gonna do the work. NIST defines these different areas. You have to identify the things that you're trying to protect. Then you want to do the things that you need to do in order to protect it. You want to detect if somebody's been at it or tried to be at it, right? And then if someone managed to do a breach, how are you going to respond to that? And then finally, how are you going to recover? So that whole circle. And that's part of, being, I guess, the whole work of being secure is doing these things. Now, and you're never going to be perfect, right? So, but, all right, let's see, this is a NIST overview. The CSF stands for Cybersecurity Framework, and it's been out for a while. Yeah. And this one thing I mentioned yesterday is one of the things where the feds are kind of our friends now, and they're doing good stuff. All the NIST stuff, if you go to their website, and I've got links for that, a lot of that's, it's all free, right? But it can't be.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Oh, they do have have you done DHS's volunteer program? Are they still doing that? Yeah. So there's a way. They have a program you can go out to. I forget where it is to get. It's in Idaho, I think. You can get like regular red hat, white hat, or red hat, exercises where somebody teaches you how to do a penetration test and all that, and you're doing it there, and it's all free. You got to fly out there and all that, spend a week with them and that, but that's pretty cool. These again are just so these are their 5 areas, and a lot of their 800 plus controls or whatever, they identify the different parts of the different areas, right? And this is, you go the circle on how you actually try to implement it and all that. And there are people out there that'll help you. You can get trained to do this. There's no, I guess one thing, there's no certification really. This is more, it's kind of like, well, no, it's different than like ISO 9000 where you are certified, right? And ISO, I tease people, if you're trying to go for ISO 27000 compared to ISO 9000, it's at least 3 times more effort, I think. But with NIST, there's no cert. You don't actually get a nice little ribbon saying that you're certified. But it is it can be a good framework to do everything or a lot of the things that you need to do. So here, when we talk about controls, those are the rules that are the software that you're using to control your procedures and the things that you're doing. Risk assessment method, that's a big thing, of course, because you want to identify what are your risks, and then you can help identify what you need to do in that. So there's their website there. Yeah, and it's free. So if you click on there, then there'll be a link to that map. I was downloading it last night and say, oh yeah, and it's mapping is well, that's a term we use quite a bit when you're going from SOC to NIST and this and that and what all, how do they overlap? That's the mapping, so. All right. And then finally, kind of regulations and legal stuff. I mentioned yesterday, at least for breach notification and all that, it's different state by state. So there's different ways. So this is more for lawyers. And this group here, this is a kind of privacy advocacy group. And I think it's like $100 a year to join or something like that. But they have a lot of good stuff, again, state by state, and they're geared for privacy. So, and they have certification programs to let you say that you know what CCPA is, and the CPRA, that's the kind of CCPA 2.0. The CCPA is the California Privacy Act that went in, 2018, I think it was. And the reason I keep harping on California is more and more states, I think, will try to kind of replicate or maybe outdo them, right? So that's a place to start. GDPR is the European one. So both of these are really geared for privacy for the most part, pretty much, which is, again, as part of the breach, you let my private information out. So guess what? You're going to have lawyers come in and, why did you not do that and that? This is pretty much the last slide, just to really get started. I would think, the first step to me is, or for us, has been train everybody in social engineering and your hygiene stuff. And then just be aware of what you're getting into, but we have to do it, because of the environment today. It's going to be ongoing, so just prepare for that. And then you can choose, get somebody to help facilitate your cyber plan at your, in your enterprise, in your organization, because it's going to take somebody to keep at it and keep championing it and to keep things going. Yeah, and there's going to be other, some of your customers eventually they're going to start pushing back on you, do you do this, right? There are, a lot of good free stuff out there. Next month is Cybersecurity Month, and so I think Stay Safe Online it was. Oh, that's more for the business, but there's a couple others. They have programs to help you with the monthly cybersecurity thing and that. This is my list of more reading. This is your homework, right? This is just for attacks and threats. But the idea is it's not only just those pages, but it gets you introduced to some of the organizations, right, that really been doing this for a while. This one here, Icstraining.inl.gov, that's the one that they have 10 videos. They're each about an hour, if I remember right. It might be 8 videos. And that really gets into IT and OT, and it does a good job of comparing the two and that. And I've been wanting these guys all right, that's part of your training. You got to do this. And it'd be something to send to the IT guys, say, hey, this is, although it's still 10 hours, it might not follow it all. But this is more for cybersecurity and software. Some of the organizations we mentioned. PCI, of course, that's credit card stuff. And then Vanta and Tugboat, those will help you for a fee, get your SOC, and also PCI. We were going back and forth between Vanta and Tugboat Logic. We just finally decided the guy that was with Vanta, he drank beer, so that's good, I guess. But then there's your NSF, and that's the end. Take care.